Welcome back to another episode of Tween Book Bites here at the Scott County Public Library in Georgetown, Kentucky. As always, I am Kelly. This is Miss Mary Lou.
I try not to squeak this time.
Okay.
Hi.
Today we will be talking about a topic that.
Speaking of toppings, you didn't bring your cake platter.
I didn't. Oh no.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I'll bring it back next month. That's okay.
All right. What are we going to be talking about?
Yes, our topic today that we shall be talking about is one that you all seem to love, and that is World War II books.
Historical fiction. Mm-hmm. And I think there's probably been more historical fiction books written in this country about World War II than just about anything. I mean, talking about adult stuff as well as kids stuff. Lots and lots of good stuff to choose from.
That and like Henry VIII and his Elizabeth. Mm-hmm. Lots of that too.
Yes.
But yeah.
But anyway, the hard part today was choosing how to narrow it down to just a few books to talk about because there are so many good ones, really good ones. So if what we're giving you today is not enough, come ask for more because we just have a ton of suggestions in this area. Mm-hmm. So you want to go first? You want me to?
Doesn't matter.
All right, I'm going to start then.
Okay.
And I'm going to start with this book, which is a fairly new one. It's called When the World Was Ours, and it was written by Liz Kessler. Now, some of you are going to be familiar with Liz Kessler because she's best known for the Emily Windsnap mermaid fantasy series. This is a real change for her because she usually writes fantasy books, and her Emily Windsnap books are so popular. Mm-hmm. Okay, this is really different. I like this book for many reasons. It's really well written. It tells three different perspectives of kids living in Europe and their experiences with World War II based on their ethnicity and how their parents, what paths opened up for them in living through the Holocaust. And this is definitely a Holocaust novel. So it starts off in 1936. One of the characters, Leo, who's kind of I'm going to say the main character in the book. And Leo is having his 10th birthday. 10th birthday? Yes, 9th birthday. I'm sorry, it's his 9th birthday. And he's invited his two best friends, Max and Elsa, to celebrate with him. And Leo's father, who's just kind of a real outgoing, friendly guy. Everybody's his friend. He's a professional photographer. He has a photography studio. And he's very well liked in his community. And he takes the children to an amusement park. And they're on a Ferris wheel ride. And this Ferris wheel has little compartments that you get inside of rather than just a seat. So Leo and his friend Max and his friend Elsa and his dad are in a little cart with a couple. They live in Vienna, by the way, Vienna, Austria. And they're in a cart with a couple of tourists, a young married couple from England. And at one point, Leo's kind of, jumping around the cart like a 9-year-old would. And he trips over this lady's leg, and they're all apologizing. And anyway, because Leo's father feels so bad, he invites this couple after they chat for a while to their house for cake to celebrate Leo's birthday. And they come, and it's delightful. And a short while later, they get a letter from England from this couple thanking them for inviting them to their house for cake. And this is going to be really important because this is going to save their lives down the road. So Leo is Jewish, and as Hitler is coming into power, and he very quickly takes over Austria, Austria falls to the Nazis, and so Leo is Jewish, Elsa is Jewish, and Max is not. And Max probably has the hardest family life. They're very poor. His father can't keep a job. The economy was really bad in Germany right before the Nazis took over. They were devastated after World War I, and there was a lot of poverty. And his father does not have a job. They are often hungry. And Max's father is a very cold, mean. He's a mean man. He's mean. And he is always belittling Max. Max is a very sensitive person, and he's making Max feel ashamed of himself all the time. So he is Max's father is ripe for the pickings when the Nazis come into power, and he immediately gets a job working for the Nazis. And there's a lot of pressure on Max. He doesn't want Max hanging out with his Jewish friends. And Max is sort of a social outcast because he's a small, kind of physically weak boy, and kids pick on him. And these were his only friends. He loved them very much, but his father won't let him hang out with them. And then in school one day, they call an assembly, a school assembly, and they say, Jewish students stand up. And Leo stands up, and they're sent to the back of the room. They are, some of the teachers won't even let them in the classroom anymore because they refuse to teach Jewish students. If they're in the classroom, they have to sit in the very back. Other students start ridiculing them and casting them out. By now, Elsa's family has decided they've already left Austria. They see the writing on the wall, and they end up in Czechoslovakia, which seems like a good move for a while, but it doesn't stay a good move. Later, and Max is very ashamed that he did not stand up for Leo, but he begins distancing himself from Leo because he just does. He's very weak. And you follow Max's path, and he ends up joining the Nazi youth and becoming a Nazi soldier down the road. Leo has been tasked by his father. His father is taken to prison, and he says, get your mother out of the country. So it's up to Leo, by this time 12 years old, to figure out how to get his mother and himself out of Germany, which is where the English couple come in. And Elsa and her family are trying to survive in Eastern Europe. So you see these different paths that these people take in trying to cope with the Holocaust. It's a very powerful novel, and what makes it even more powerful is this is based on the character Leo. The reason he's the main character is because he is based on Liz Kessler's grandfather. And their family, she is alive today because her grandfather was able to get him and his mother out of the country and to escape the Nazis. So anyway, you will learn a lot about what the Holocaust was like. This book, I'm going to recommend it for 10 and up, like 10 to 14. There's some rough stuff in this book. Any book about the Holocaust is going to have some very, very difficult stuff to read. It's all true. We need to know it. But it's a beautiful, difficult book. When the World Was Ours by Liz Kessler.
Let's see, which one should I go with first? They're all so good. You pick.
We'll do the one on top.
Okay.
Let's do the one on top
do that.
Because you like that a lot. You like that writer.
I do like this writer a lot. I've not read all of her stuff, but I've read a number of her. She writes a whole lot of World War II fiction. So this is Traitors Among Us by Marcia. I'm gonna butcher her name. I apologize. Marcia Forchuk-Skripich.
Sounds right to me. Looks right.
Yeah. So my favorite of her ones that I have read is Making Bombs for Hitler, which is just so good. So good. But this is her most recent book. It came out just like 2-3 weeks ago, maybe.
Yeah. This one I just talked with is really new too.
Yeah. So this is actually the third in a trilogy. You do not have to have read the other two to understand what's going on here, because I didn't realize it was a trilogy until a third of the way through the book, and I was like, I'm not having a problem, but I feel like I'm supposed to know something. So, we have book 1. Mary Lou has ordered book 2. This is book 3.
Yeah, somehow I missed that was a trilogy and that I had not ordered number 2.
Yeah.
Sorry about that.
It's all good. Like I said, they're mostly standalone, so still highly suggest this if you haven't read the other ones. So this follows sisters Kristia and Maria. They are Ukrainian, which is a lot of the author's books are Ukrainian. That is where her family originates. These are all not based on real people, but her history in general. So they have... this takes place actually after World War II has officially ended, but the world is still a mess. Europe is just in ruins, and the sisters have just made it to an American refugee camp when the Soviets come in And this was before the Americans knew what the Soviets were doing. But they were coming in to all the refugee camps and just picking up anybody that they thought was maybe going to be a problem in the future. So there is a girl who was the daughter of the farm owner where one of the sisters had been stationed she worked there. That was her job, but now it was forced labor. And so this girl has snuck her way into this refugee camp because this girl was a Nazi, like straight up. And so the Soviets come into this like bunk area. The sisters hide under the bed because they're so used to having to hide from everybody that they hide under the bed, which turns out to be not a good move because this Nazi girl Sophie is like, hey, there's some traitors hiding under that bed over there, and they're like, okay, get out. And so they get rounded up, and then unfortunately for Sophie, that was a bad move on her part too, though, because then they're like, these papers are fake. These are not your papers. You're coming with us too. And at first the sisters, they're in the back of this truck, and the sisters are like, okay, the Americans are going to help us, it's fine. But like I said, the Americans did not realize what was going on so much. They were just like, oh yeah, the Soviets are just taking the people that are actually theirs. They're just, repatriating them.
The Americans probably knew a lot more, but they were allied with the Russians during the war. That's come out in some other novels I've read, that they turned a blind eye to some real bad things that happened because they were fighting with the Soviets against the Nazis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but, so the Americans like, okay, sounds good, and they are taken in this truck. And this, like the previous novel, I would say this is for our older tweens as well, because some people get killed, like, right there on the page. But yeah, so these sisters end up in not quite a camp, but they are taken basically to a prison. And they have to figure out how to escape alongside some other folks that they meet. And it is really good.
Is it good? It's like a thriller.
So good, yes. Yeah. I cannot suggest her books enough. They are so good. So good.
Convinced me. I need to read them. Well, I'm going to talk about two that I'm going to say that these could be for younger. These are companion books, in my opinion, because one is nonfiction and one is a fictionalized account of the same event. What a lot of people know that there was a lot. The Nazis bombed London. That the Nazis, their next step in the progress of their war was to take over England, and so they were bombing London like crazy. Yeah, the Blitz. What happened is a lot of children that lived in London were taken and sent out to live with families in the country to get them away from the bombing. That's pretty well known. What a lot of people don't know is that they tried to get some of the children out of the country, and they put them on ships and took them to other countries like Canada. And this story is about a ship called the Benares that was taking a shipload of children to Canada to live with relatives or families that were willing to foster them to get them away from all the violence in England. And they felt like Canada was a safe place. Unfortunately, the Benares, they were really careful because there were a lot of what were called U-boats in the ocean, and those are the German submarines, and they were torpedoing the Allied forces' ships. And so the Benares, which was carrying a lot of gold in addition to this shipload of 90 children, they were going to use the gold to buy military equipment in Canada, and they were going to bring the equipment back after they left the children off. And they were traveling with a military convoy. And the children were...
To a certain point.
Yes. They stayed with the convoy. That was the mistake. Right? Anyway, let me press on with this story.
Okay.
They drilled the children on what to do. They wore life jackets to bed every night until they got so far from the shore where it was considered safe. There would not be any U-boats. And they had been traveling with this convoy of ships, and the pilot, the captain of the boat, had to make a decision whether to go separately, which would be a little faster, or to stick with the convoy. And he decided to stay with the convoy, which is how they got bombed. They were torpedoed the very night that the children were allowed to go to bed without their life jackets. I think am I remembering this wrong?
I think so.
All right, well, they were torpedoed. Let's leave it there. You can read the book and find out whether they
we'll find out what really happened.
Got it in my notes, but anyway.
I read both of those, and
Okay, anyway. So they were torpedoed, and the ship sank really, really fast. So the kids knew what to do. They were rushing out. They were getting their life jackets on. They were getting on their lifeboats. Now keep in mind, it's the middle of winter. It's a storm that night, and they're in their pajamas. They're trying to get them down into the lifeboats and off the ships, and the lifeboats, the ship is sinking. The lifeboats are swinging through the air. Fact that only one lifeboat survived. One lifeboat that was supposed to be filled with 13 kids was filled with 50 people. There were 90 children, and then the whole crew and the caregivers,
and people who paid
to get on this trip. So a lot of people on the ship. They all died except this lifeboat of children. So here you have the nonfiction Torpedoed that tells you who was on the boat and what they did to survive. This book narrates one character and his personal experiences on the boat. This is a book in verse, making it a quicker read, very powerful. I would suggest this for ages 8 and up. This is just a more text-heavy read, so it's maybe a little bit older reader, but if you like good nonfiction, this is a fabulous book. Won awards. So, Lifeboat 12, this book was written by Susan Hood. Torpedo, the true story of the World War II sinking of the children's ship, is written by Deborah Heiligman. Excellent books, both of them.
I'm thinking, I want to say that they parted ways, and that's why it took so long to rescue them, because there were no other ships in the area.
Let me see. You're right. I'm sorry, they were gone. You are exactly right.
Because that's why they went whoosh away from the sinking ship, and then it took forever to find them because they were.
You're right.
Okay.
Sorry.
No, well, I was like, logic, brain, working.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll just keep going down the pile. That's fine. This is also a novel in verse, and like my previous book, takes place at the very, very tail end, and then after World War II in Manchuria, which is not a geographical place, country, so to speak, any longer. This is set in China. Manchuria is what they called it when. Okay, so technically it's like it was the ancient capital, the area of China. But then the Japanese took it over during World War II and were like, yes, okay, so we're going to put all our people in power here. It doesn't, we're running out of space in Japan, so we're going to send, if you need a job, you need somewhere to live, get a new start, go to Manchuria, it'll be great. And so a lot of people did. Except, well, that didn't end well. So our main character here is Natsu, and the other thing, Manchuria is near the border of the Soviet Union. So when Natsu's father is conscripted for the army at the very end of the war, like he had served in World War I and was older, and so nobody really expected him to get conscripted because he had already served his time. But it got to the very end of World War II, and they were getting very desperate for soldiers, so they came and rounded up any able-bodied male adult, even remotely able-bodied.
Who conscripted?
The Japanese army, yes. Conscripted the Japanese in Manchuria, and they were like, okay, we're gonna do it, we're gonna make this, we're gonna save, it's fine, it's great, we're gonna be great. No. Very quickly, news comes to this town that they gotta get out, because Japan has lost, and the Soviet army is coming for them. They're kind of going down going down China and taking anything out, basically. And you can kind of tell in the very beginning that Natsu's been very much indoctrinated in the idea that everybody's very happy that the Japanese are here and living and working, and it's great, except you can tell that's not true, because she runs into people who are native to the land, and they're, like, yelling terrible things at her, and she's like, what's wrong with you? And it's like, maybe it's because you took their land and pushed them out. But, very quickly, so Natsu has to take care of her little sister, Asa, and this neighborhood lady, they call her Auntie, she moves in after her father is conscripted into the army, and at first they don't get along, because this lady is a little bit overbearing. Their father had let them do kind of whatever they wanted. Their mother had died shortly after giving birth to Asa, so she's not been in the picture. And this little old lady, they don't get along at all. They just, like, argue back and forth all the time. But this lady 100% is key to saving their lives. So as soon as they get the news that they need to evacuate, they start moving south, and this lady is like, we're not stopping, the entire town has to leave. And so they are walking and walking and walking. Eventually they end up catching a train that they find out is the last train line in existence, because the army has blown up the trains as they're going and blown up the railway system so that they can't be followed. So this is the last train out. And they end up in a port city, which I don't remember which one. And they are being ridiculed by the Chinese people that live there, and they're, like, holed up in this one little Japanese school, not schoolhouse, that's not fair, school building, and they are stuck there for a very long time. Eventually, I don't want to ruin it, but also, like, at the very, okay, it's in the front flap, that's not ruining it then. So, they're living in this school, and Natsu, the lady that has been with them, their aunt, family friend aunt, has passed, and Natsu gets sick, and is like, I'm gonna die, but I have to take care of my little sister. So she ends up there, all these people outside the school, like, all the time, trying to be like, hey, I'll adopt your child. And so she finds what she decides this is, like, the nicest looking lady. It's this Russian lady. And so while Asa is asleep, she basically sells her little sister to this Russian lady so that she'll, like, have a good life. But then Natsu makes it through. And so she has to figure out, she, like, is like, you stole my sister! Outside this lady's house for, like, days on end, trying to get her sister back. And it's really good. It's also, honestly, really depressing. If you've ever seen the Studio Ghibli film Grave of the Fireflies, which I have described as the most depressing movie I've ever seen, it's really good, but I will never watch it again because it was too depressing. It kind of reminded me of this. I don't know if it was just because it was post World War II setting, but it had the same kind of feel as well.
I think that, one of the reasons that this is such a rich area for stories is because World War II was like the whole world.
Yeah.
Every continent was affected, maybe not Antarctica, but, and so many different cultures, and there was just so much conflict everywhere, and yet two powers trying to take over the world, Germany and Japan. So there was that and that's, I'm going to get into some of the stuff about the Japanese in just a minute, but it's not happy stuff.
No.
It's not happy stuff.
No. It was really good, though.
Was it good?
But, like, also you might cry. Just a heads up.
All right, so I'm going to America now. I'm going to talk about American stuff in the war. And this book, I just read it. It's been on our shelf for quite a while, called The Green Glass Sea, and it's written by Ellen Klages. And it's part of a trilogy. It's the first one in the trilogy. And this tells a story that was really intriguing to me. I've not read I've read some nonfiction about this, but I've never read fiction about the creation of the atomic bomb. And this is about the children whose parents created the bomb, the American bomb. The main character in the book is a girl named Dewey. And Dewey, she is, there was an accident when she was small that damaged her leg real badly. She's very small, and one leg is shorter than the other. She has to wear an orthopedic shoe. She wears these big thick glasses. She's got hair. She is the target of a lot of not very nice teasing. The kids make fun of her. She doesn't really care. She sort of lives in her own world. She's brilliant, like her father. Her father is a Harvard mathematics professor, and she has got the mind of a physicist. She loves to create and engineer things, and that's, people can make fun of her. She doesn't care. Her life is lived with building, and she likes mechanical engineering, and she builds little motors and radios, and she's always collecting junk everywhere. She sees stuff and she picks it up and stores it so she can build something with it. And she has a really wonderful relationship with her father. Her mother's out of the picture. But she and her father are really close. But once he's commissioned to build the bomb, she ends up moving in with her grandmother, who looks after her until she has a stroke and ends up in a nursing home. So Dewey has to go live with her dad at Los Alamos. Now, Los Alamos was a village that was built by the U.S. Army out in the middle of the desert of New Mexico. And it was so top secret, it was not on any map. Nobody had, outside of it, even heard of Los Alamos. But that is where they pulled the most brilliant mathematicians, physicists, and scientists in the United States, and some that had escaped Germany to move to the United States. So all these brilliant scientists from all over the world moved there and lived there while they were working on this bomb. And it becomes a little microcosm of any kind of middle school life. At the beginning of the book, Dewey is 10, and by the end of the book, I think she's 13. But all the kids there pick on her, and these are Circle of the Mean Girls, and there's this other character who's going to become really important, a girl named Suze. And Suze is a big, kind of chunky, awkward girl who wants to be popular so bad, and she does everything she can to fit in with the mean girls, and they don't like her. She's too pushy, she's too bossy, she's too big, and they all call her Truck behind her back. So there are these two boys, and some of the mean girls have crushes on these two boys, but the only girl that these boys will hang out with is Dewey, because they find Dewey. They hang out with Dewey in the junkyard. There's a junkyard where they put all the building debris because they're building all these buildings, and Dewey's always in there looking for nuts and bolts and springs and stuff. And the boys are building a tree house, and they're always in there getting lumber. And Dewey's the only other person. They show her where their tree house is, and they introduce her to comics. So she's reading comics. But anyway, at some point, Dewey's father has to go to Washington because he's kind of the PR person with the president. He's filling the president in on the development of the bomb. And for those of you who don't know it, Germany was working on an atomic bomb, and America was working on an atomic bomb. And America knew that Germany was really close to getting it, and they knew that if Germany got the atomic bomb, that the war was over, that Germany was going to win. They were going to just bomb everything. So that's why the race was so rabid. They were so desperate to get this bomb first, and of course they did. But that's these scientists that were working day and night. So these kids basically had free run. Their parents were never around. But anyway, Dewey's father has to go to Washington. Dewey has to move in with Suze and her family, and Suze hates her. So part of this novel really is about the development of their relationship, because they're the two outcasts, and they gradually begin to respect each other. Suze is very artistic, and she begins to get really interested with what Dewey's creations, and Dewey has respect for her art, and then they start standing up to the mean girls, and they really empower each other. It's a really neat story, but you're also watching what's going on with the creation of this bomb. The reason it's called the Green Glass Sea, I'm going to give this little spoiler. They detonated the bomb in the desert of New Mexico to see if it would work. They wanted to see how powerful it was, and it literally turned the desert into glass because everything melted. And so when they go out there, there's just green glass everywhere. it's the melted sand. And one of the things I really like about the book is after the bomb is, and the book ends right after they detonate the sample bomb. Suze's mother, who's a chemist and has been helping, is horrified. And she says, please tell me we are never going to use this. Well, if you know what happens in World War II, the United States did drop 2 nuclear bombs on Japan, Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And the next book is going to deal with the aftermath of that and the Cold War that follows. But this is really a coming-of-age story of 2 girls living, and all these kids are brilliant. Their parents are brilliant. They're brilliant. Coming of age in this really unusual world. And the next book will be so interesting to read about the aftermath of the dropping of the atomic bomb. This is called The Green Glass Sea, written by Ellen Klages. Excellent.
Nice.
Excellent book.
All right. My next one is called All He Knew by Helen Frost. This is also in verse. And this is from 3 different points of view. Set in America. Our main character is Henry. And we also get a little bit of point of view from his older sister Molly, as well as Victor, who is a conscientious objector. Had to make sure I got that right. Anyway, SO. That's what we're going to call that from now on, because I'm all tongue-tied this morning, apparently.
CO.
Thank you. CO. Yep. I know what I'm saying. A CO. Yeah. Which will come into play. So, Henry, as a small child, he's growing up. He has a great life. His parents, his older sister, they all get along swimmingly. Henry gets very ill. And as he was recovering, it kind of reminded me of Helen Keller and how she lost her hearing, because with the fever, he has lost his hearing. And at first, it's kind of like, oh, he has a little bit, but then it is completely gone. And so, yes, by age 6, so he just kind of stops talking to anybody, because he knew how to speak. He was very smart. But other people, as time went on, his speech got a little more slurred, and it got difficult for other people to understand what he was saying, and they would get frustrated, and then he just got frustrated. There was a big to-do with a birthday party where it ended up that a ball gets thrown through a window and breaks, and the glass ends up all over the cake, and it was just a big misunderstanding. But part of it was because Henry didn't understand what had been said to him. So he's decided he's just not going to talk. His family is basically told, okay, so your child, this is not a good environment for your child to be growing up in. And so they're like, okay, so there's this school for the deaf. You can go and do like a tour, and there's a test that you have to pass. Henry just gets like really upset and confused and hides under the table instead of doing it. It's literally the test. They wanted him to blow out a candle, and he's just confused, like, what? Why do I have to do that? What is this? Ugh, I don't know what's going on. He hides under the table, and then he is labeled unteachable. And so instead of going to the school for the deaf, where he would be able to learn, he is sent to an institution, basically. It is full of all sorts of other men, women, little bitty kids, older adults. They're all separated out by age and gender, and it's not great. It's really not great. But eventually, he has these 2 friends, and so he makes it work. World War II starts, and slowly all of the workers who are employed by this institution are drafted or go and enroll themselves, and so there aren't enough people to work, and so the COs, where they come in, are sent as very, very low paid, sometimes unpaid labor to help out. So that's where Victor comes in. He is sent as a worker here. And he realizes pretty quickly that Henry is incredibly smart. And he ends up mailing a letter to Molly, Henry's older sister, and is like, hey, let's figure out a way to get Henry out of here, because this is just not... We're trying to make this a better place than it was when I started. I don't totally know what was going on, but I can tell it was not good. But Henry does not belong here. He does not belong here at all. And so it's them, and it ends way after World War II, but it's a delightful story. I really liked it. A little bit sad at first, because it's like, oh, Henry, you shouldn't have to deal with all this. This is terrible. But it's very hopefully. So, it was good.
Good.
And it's a very short read, because it is in verse.
Conscientious objectors, there weren't many of them in World War II, and they were really ostracized.
Yeah, oh yeah. Yeah, I knew about this other guy that was a CO, and his mother told his fiance not to marry her son because she was so embarrassed. Mm-hmm. But Victor's family is not like that, which is very nice.
Yeah. All right, my last book.
Okay.
Paper Wishes by Lois Sepabon, who is actually a teacher in Kentucky.
Oh!
So it's a great, great book. And this tells a whole nother chapter of America in World War II. As soon as Japan bombed Pearl Harbor, Japanese American citizens, people who were citizens in America, Japanese ethnicity, they probably were born here, maybe they'd even been here for generations, were rounded up and put into camps because they were considered a threat to American security. This is a story of one little girl. Her name is Manami. She lived on the West Coast. There was a large Japanese population up around Washington State, farmers. They were rounded up. They were told they could take like one suitcase, and they were taken out into the desert and put into basically concentration camps. They were bunks. Bunker buildings surrounded by fences. They were given little jobs there, but they basically lost everything when they were moved out to these camps. They lost their homes. They lost their livelihood. They lost their businesses. Manami, who lives with her parents and her beloved grandfather, she's so close to her grandfather. Her grandfather has a little dog, Eugen. And Manami does what many children would do, took the little dog and tucked it into her coat to sneak him out to the concentration camp. And she is caught with the dog.
Oh no.
And they take the dog and they just shoot, the soldiers take the dog and shoo it away. Manami was already very traumatized by what was going on, and then after she loses the dog, she refuses to speak. She becomes mute. And so the book kind of follows her and what life is like in this camp. The grandfather becomes very, very withdrawn. He's depressed. The brother, who is away at college, comes back to live with the family on the camp, and he's teaching it. They set up a school. Her mother is desperately trying to plant a little garden in the desert and grow some flowers and vegetables. But it's such a horrible chapter in American history. Such a horrible chapter. And this book really captures what it was like for the people that experienced it. This book reads younger. I'm going to say, 8 and up. It's lovely. It's just beautifully written. Sepabon is a beautiful writer. But I really encourage you to read this and learn about this if this is something you don't know about. Paper Wishes by Lois Sepabon.
And if you really like it, for older readers, George Takei, Star Wars actor, was a child, and this happened to him, and he has written a graphic novel memoir about it that is just fantastic. So, my last book, Faceless by Catherine Lasky. I read this yesterday, and it is really good.
She loves it.
It's really fast-paced, and okay. So, very quickly. Basically, it's also a little bit... So it's alternate history, sort of, not really, but okay. So there is this secret society of spies in England, in the world of this novel, called the Rossas, as in tabula rasa, or like blank slate. So all of the Rossas have this face that's like almost too perfect, they're talking about the golden ratio. The book literally starts with Alice's older sister Louise having plastic surgery done on her face because she's decided she wants out. She doesn't want to be a Rasa anymore, and so she's had plastic surgery done to change her face just enough, because all of the Rasas, they have that face that just like, you're like, oh, where do I know that person from? Huh. And like, if you don't see them enough, you just like, the next time you see them, you have no recognition. Their faces are just like blank, faceless, if you will.
Huh.
Yeah. So, so Secret Society of Spies. Alice's whole family is our member of the Rossas, except her older sister Louise, who has just decided that she's done. It's like 1944, I want to say, so it's near the tail end of World War II. Alice and Louise's father has been in deep undercover in the Nazi regime. He's like the head of the automobiles, so like he fixes all the cars that all the Nazi leaders are driven around in, so he gets all sorts of intel from that. And they have just, after Louise, it's been a couple months, I think, since Louise has had her work done, and Alice and her mother get instructions that they're also going to go deep undercover. They're going to go meet her father in Germany, and they have their own mission to try and bring down Hitler. And it is so good. It's so cool. So it's really fun. And you see like all of these actual historical people, and it just, man, I didn't know that. Okay, so Wagner, the composer, Hitler was super obsessed with his work, and also Wagner's daughter-in-law was like a mega Nazi. She was real with Hitler, and so they literally were like putting on performances of Wagner's operas like every night. They would make these crazy scenes and have people pretend to be singing while they would play the records, and it was a big to-do, and that is one of the things that Alice ends up doing, and it's real cool.
So many great stories.
Yeah.
We probably talked too long, but it's just so hard not to really go on and on about these books. Are so good. I haven't read much bad fiction from this time period.
No.
Anyway, come talk to us. We got more recommendations.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See you next week. Bye.
Bye.